Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our first session of Financial Foundation to Entrepreneurial Peace Training. Super excited that you are here to join me. Going to give people the opportunity to come on in. Going to let everybody come on in. Welcome, welcome. Welcome. Great to see everybody. Happy Monday. For those who are in Canada, happy Thanksgiving. Those are celebrating today, so welcome. Great to see everybody. While we're just giving other people a chance to join us, drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Would love to hear. Vancouver, yes, Stephanie.
Tracy.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
And allow somebody else to join us. Minneapolis, Illinois, perfect. Welcome. Come on in. So if you just joined us, feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from. And I'm gonna give it one more minute and then we're gonna get started so I can be respectful of your time. I will drop right now in the chat the link to the workbook in case you didn't have a chance to download that, because I do wanna make sure you have that at your fingertips. Thanks, Barb, for letting me know. We'll send out the replay later too, so you'll have that for anything that you miss. Okay, so here's the link for the workbook in case anybody missed it or didn't have a chance to download it from the email. And we're going to use this workbook for all of our sessions. So you'll be able to use that, kind of fill in the blanks so it can help you stay focused on what we're doing. Welcome, welcome. All right, let's get started because you are here. And as I said, I want to be respectful of your time. My name is Tracy Bissett, and I am a financial coach for entrepreneurs. I'm also a professor at Centennial College, where I teach students to become financial planners. Host of the Young Money podcast, which is all geared around helping young adults make sense of their money. And Stephanie Kunar, who's joined us here, she was our most recent guest on Young Money. So sharing her knowledge from her recent book, Backpack to Briefcase. So to help students figure out what it is that they want to zero in on and then how to actually go out and make that happen, which is great. Also host of Biz Money Talks, which is a live show that appears on LinkedIn and Facebook weekly. So you are in the right place if you absolutely want to increase your financial knowledge. To give you a little bit more info about my background, I was a banker for many, many years, and with TD Bank in Canada, one of Canada's big 5 banks. They're on the Eastern Seaboard in the US, and certainly had the opportunity to support thousands of customers, whether personal or commercial or business customers, get access to financing, help them better understand their cash flow. And for 8 of those years, I was approving loans. So across all different industries, all across Canada, some in the US as well. And so lots of experience. And what I found that I really enjoyed was working directly with clients, as well as working with newer lenders to help them understand all these concepts. And so learning about things kind of in a book is very much different than when you learn it hands-on, when you're certainly in your business. So would love to also see in the chat, one thing you're hoping to take away from our trainings this week. What is it that you're hoping to take away? And it might be something from a subject matter item, or it might be actually something more around how you're wanting to feel, whether you're wanting to feel more in control, more confident, and everybody's going to have something different. So if you're comfortable, please do share it in the chat. And you can send it just to me too, if you're not feeling comfortable to share it with everybody. Perfect. So Linda's saying, I love learning. Thank you for checking it out. Stephanie McCullough, clarity on how to efficiently stay on top of my business finances. Stephanie Kunar, how to be more financially successful. Barb saying, learning as much as I can about my financials in my biz. Absolutely. So that's wonderful. So hopefully you've had a chance to download the workbook. It looks like this. The link is in the chat. Perfect. Barb's showing hers as well. So you can download that in the Google link. And you can fill it in on your computer or you can print it. I'm kind of old school too. I like to have the paper in front of me. Makes it a little bit easier, which is wonderful. And so we're going to go along live through this. This is really informal. So as I'm going through, please do drop your questions in the chat. Feel free to unmute, ask some questions, or if there's something you want to chime in on. This training is really for you. And my goal is that you're able to accomplish these goals that you've set out here in the chat, and that at the end of today's session, you're already starting to think about, what am I going to do different? And every day we're going to break it into bite-sized pieces. So today is going to be really all cash flow focused. Page number 2 in your book, Cash Flow One-on-One, and why is it so important to know your numbers? That's where we are absolutely going to start today, so that we can take a look at that. And as I said, I was in commercial lending and risk management. I was with TD for 16 years. I certainly was with them through the financial crisis in 2008. I've been working in lockstep with entrepreneurs through COVID. So definitely seen what has happened during those times of turbulence and what can happen. And so why is it so important that we know our numbers? So that very first part of the workbook that you can see there is, it is critical to know your numbers now. And so why is that? Number one, certainly we're still in unprecedented times. I think we'd all like to think that COVID is behind us and that we're going to be moving on and that we're just going to snap our fingers and it's going to be gone. And in some places, things are moving a little bit quicker than others, but there's still some industries that have been very hard hit. And so we're coming through it, but we're still in unprecedented times. Number two, every company's financial situation is different. Okay. So some people had lots of cash reserves, some people had access to lots of credit, some people didn't know that those things might be important one day, and then this pandemic came out of nowhere. So everybody's in a different space and kind of phase of their business, and industry plays a huge role in that. So number two, every company's financial situation is different. And number three, two things that I know to be true. Strong companies are present in every single industry. So that's the first one. And those that plan perform better. So when you've got a place that you think you're going, you're already on top of your numbers. You're already thinking about, what if this doesn't happen? What if this doesn't happen? What am I going to do? When you've got kind of those backup routes that you're going to take, almost like when you're going to go on a drive and you've got your GPS mapped out, but you've got those backup plans just in case something fails with those routes. And so those are the three reasons why it's so critical to know your numbers now. And I don't think there's ever been a more pressing time to know them, because it's very hard to solve problems when we can't quantify them. So the next part is, how do we actually assess that financial situation? So profit is based on accounting rules. And that's the first blank, and reflects all revenues and expenses. And so revenue is just a fancy word for saying, what are your sales and what are all of your expenses? And we show those on our income statement. Some people will call it a statement of earnings. Some people will call it a P&L or a profit and loss. All those names mean the exact same thing. We're talking about our sales minus our expenses. And at the bottom, we're hoping to see a profit, not a loss, when we get down to the bottom. But that's just part of the story. And that's what's so important and so key. And so we've got to really understand cash flow. So during my time at the bank, certainly I've seen businesses go under in as quick as 90 days, because they might have been highly profitable on paper using those accounting rules with sales bigger than their expenses, but the cash flow was not coming in. And so if you have a shortage of cash, you don't have other sources, you don't have savings of your own personally, or you don't have access to credit, your business will definitely flounder and be very challenged. And so I've seen companies where sales are going through the roof, best growth ever, but they didn't have those backstops, and all of a sudden the company, due to its growth, went under in as quick as 90 days. So we've got to understand cash flow. So down at the bottom of that page 2 in your workbook, so what is cash flow? Firstly, it's inflows. Money comes into our bank account. Okay, so inflows. Number 2, it is outflows. And 3, which is kind of the magic, is the timing that it happens. All right. So we've got inflows coming in, outflows going out, and that timing that it happens. And we don't necessarily have all the money on the same day that we might like to think we would, or just that everything's going to work out. And so right on the bottom of that page 2 is, sales is not the same as cash flow, as cash or cash flow. And so we've got to be really clear on that we've got to have the cash coming in. Okay. And I'm just going to pause there just for a second, see if there's any questions, any comments anybody wanted to make. And if you can give me a thumbs up or a reaction if the pace is okay. Okay, perfect. So please do jump in because I'm going to go through it so then we can have some time at the end for questions. Thank you very much. Questions, Stephanie Kunar?
Yeah, so did you say profit is based on sales? Is that, or I missed that, and reflects all revenues and expenses?
So sales minus our expenses hopefully leads to profit at the bottom.
Right.
And if our sales are not as big as our, not greater than our expenses, we're going to have a loss. Absolutely. But we're looking really for that understanding that our sales is not the same as our cash flow. Yeah, we want to make sure that we understand that. And that if we have customers, go ahead, Barb.
Did you say profit is based on accounting rules?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah, perfect. And it's good that everybody's taking notes in their workbook. And I will also send out recaps of the workbook pages. So if you happen to miss anything and you don't ask and you want to just double check, you'll be able to do that too. We'll send that email out later today so that you've got the recap. And so almost thinking about what happens with our customer when we start working with them, when do we get paid, is kind of a nice way to start thinking about our cash flow. Okay, so when is that moment and that happens? If you're working with corporates, you might do a lot of work with them before you actually send your first invoice. And now maybe you're 30, 45 days later. Some of you are collecting money up front before you do any work with them. So Barb, I think that's primarily your model, right? So if you've got the cash in first, then you're going to start doing the work. And there's all kinds of combinations thereof, depending on the type of work that you're doing and the type of industry you're in, because there's going to be norms with every industry. So you want to understand what's the norm and then what's actually happening to me. And do I actually have things set up in the normal way? Or do I need to change things? Because as a small business owner, it is challenging to extend credit to other people. You can't necessarily be the bank for everybody else. Okay, there's just not enough cash around and flex around as you're getting things going. Okay, so on to page 3. We got some important lessons we want to think about. Okay, so as business owner, I am accountable for the financial position of my company. So this isn't just if you like numbers. It's not just if you understand numbers. You are fully accountable. Okay, and then going on to the next paragraph, I do not have to do it alone. And that's what I want everybody to remember. That is absolutely critical. I can make use of professionals like an accountant, a bookkeeper, a financial planner, and financial coach to support me. So I do not have to do it alone. I can make use of professionals like an accountant, bookkeeper, financial planner, and financial coach to support me. And so that's really critical. And there's more professionals out there that can help you. And so if the bookkeeper's doing your books every month, that's fantastic. But you still need to look at them. You still need to ask questions. You still need to make sure that they make sense. And I'm not a huge advocate of business owners doing their own bookkeeping unless they really have a passion for it and they're going to make sure it's a priority, because that's one of those things that's just going to be put to the side and doesn't get done because it won't seem as critical as making that sale and client delivery and all of that kind of stuff. So work with professionals. If you're not understanding things, get the education that you need and then drive things forward. Okay. And so one of the key takeaways from this first session, and we're doing 2 sessions today, is I want you to think about, so even close your eyes. What would entrepreneurial peace look like for my business, my family, and I? Specifically, if I was in control of my financial results and cash flow, what would that look and feel like? What would it allow me to do? So you've probably had some things pop up in your mind about what that entrepreneurial piece is going to look like for your business and for you and your family. So jot down those feelings and those thoughts in your workbook or type them if you're doing it online, because I don't want you to lose that feeling that you're hoping to gain. I want you to be able to make sure that you can keep track of that aspirational feeling, because it's not something that is so far-fetched, so out of reach. This is all achievable. And so I want you to be able to document how that feels for you, what that looks like, what that feels like. Does it mean you're sleeping through the night? Does it mean you're eagerly taking on new projects because you know that you've got the bandwidth, you've got the cash flow, the financial cushion to deal with that? Does that mean when you're at the end of your rope and you know you need to hire somebody else, you're doing it with confidence versus kind of lingering back because you're not sure if you've got enough funds to do it? So for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. For some people, it might be finally going on that family holiday that you promised your family when you started your business X number of years ago. Maybe it's getting that steady paycheck from your business. So whatever that is, everybody's got a different reason. Everyone's got a different way that that's going to feel. Okay. And so in terms of brainstorming, this last part on page 3, this is what I was alluding to when we think about when we're doing business with a customer. How does my cash flow cycle correspond to the sales and expenses in my business? So think through what happens when you make a sale to a customer. When and how does the cash flow into the business? And then when does that cash flow out to pay your expenses? So everybody's situation is going to be a little bit unique. And if you want to drop your industries in the chat as well, that would be helpful for me, because then we can talk through examples. And I want to see if there's any commonalities amongst you, so that we can actually talk through some examples of that. Okay, career coaching, financial planning and investment management, absolutely. And so for Stephanie Kunar, I know you've got sale of books and then you've got sale of coaching packages. And I imagine that if someone wanted more in-depth coaching, you might have an ongoing kind of arrangement. You may not be there yet. Perfect STEM consulting I'm seeing, and then a membership. And so with the STEM consulting, is it with larger organizations, so that you're doing some work and then you're invoicing later, or are you able to collect some money up front? So let me know in the chat. And then with membership, as Barb said, that's money coming in up front, but then there needs to be the planning throughout the year. Because if you're collecting upfront revenues from people, then it's about how do I spread that to make sure I cover my bills throughout that 12 months of that person being a member, and making sure that I've got that cash covered. And then it brings up the question, how do we make that recur? What's our strategy for when membership comes up for renewal? How do we bring in more members? And so making sure that cash flow goes through. So Stephanie McCullough, most of the revenue is quarterly chunks, expenses are monthly. Yeah, so you're probably getting in a lot. You've got to make sure that you know how much your expenses are going to be over the next quarter, cover that. And same for the STEM, is a designated client what is best? Okay. So if you're dealing with a larger corporate, they usually hold most of the power in the relationships. So unless you're developing something from that where you can get an upfront fee and you're able to charge them that, you're probably going to be getting invoices as you go along and you do your work. And depending on their payment processing mechanism, it's not that they're trying to be slow in paying, they just have a more circuitous system in terms of doing their payables. So, okay. And Linda saying upfront planning fee. I remember that when we spoke. And then monthly subscription. Yeah, monthly income from assets managed. Perfect. Expenses are monthly. So you're already thinking through, how does that money flow through my business? And so some of you may never have thought about that before. And so if this is your first time doing that, that is fantastic, because you might now start thinking about when, at times when this didn't work for you and when you didn't like the way that that cash flowed. And so sometimes there's not much we can do if we have legacy or recurring clients, but we can certainly change the way we do things moving forward if we don't like what's happening. And tomorrow we're going to dig into pricing. So we're going to make sure you're pricing profitably to make sure that everything's kind of going through. So that's usually one of the biggest culprits I see. But understanding this difference between I book my sale and then I've got these expenses versus how is this money coming in and out is absolutely critical. And so on to page 4, the last part for this section, session number 1, about just cash flow 101 and why it's important to know our numbers. I'm gonna admit somebody else. Perfect. Great.
That's my business partner. Tracy.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Hi, Luann. And I'm just gonna put the link for the workbook again. I'll drop it in the chat in case Luann needs it. Thank you. So we're on page 4 of the workbook. And so I want you to start thinking through these questions as I raise them to you. And you might want to jot down your answers. So really about you and your business and kind of what's going on. Do I look forward to working on the financial side of my business, or do I put it off? Okay. So I like it, but I put it off sometimes because I got lots of other things to do. Okay. Do you have separate personal and business bank accounts? Okay. So if you're sole proprietor, especially, easy to mix all those things up together and really make a little mess for yourself as you move through. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. That makes it very challenging. Do you produce financial reporting on a regular basis for your business? So do you have a monthly profit and loss that shows your sales and your expenses? If your business is small and growing, maybe you're doing it in Excel, you're not even using an accounting software. But if you are getting bigger, you certainly need to look at something like a QuickBooks Online or a Sage or something like that, where you can actually record all of that information. Okay. Okay. And so I think it was, you did have accounting software and you've got separate accounts. So that is super excellent. And finally, if you do have the monthly reporting, which is great, so already give yourself a hand for that. Do you review it regularly and actually use it to make decisions? Okay. So if you got the numbers, but you don't look at them, another step to go there. But certainly you want to be able to move that forward and think about that. And so if you're thinking about your action items, so I already want you to be in action. We've just had a little snippet of profit from our accounting standpoint, looking at our cash flow. What are the first 3 things I need to do so I can better understand the financial position in my business and use my financial results to make decisions? So be very specific, and nothing is too small. So it could be the sheer act of getting a separate bank account. That's going to make your life so much easier in the first place, because now you're kind of got everything commingled. You don't know where's the issue. You don't know if your business is not making money. You don't know if your lifestyle is too expensive. It's just a big mess. You're combing through receipts. It's painful. For other people, it might be, I'm going to move from Excel to an accounting software. Okay. It may be that you do have the information, but maybe you only do it quarterly. You don't get it updated every month. And so sticking to a regular routine to do monthly. Okay, that's really important. Reviewing the information monthly so you can use it to make decisions. Okay. And it could be also, and we're going to get into this a little bit later through the week, but we're going to talk about routines to put in place, because we can't expect all of a sudden, like if we're going to be physically fit, we can't expect to eat healthy one day and hope that we're going to be losing weight and that we're going to be stronger and we're going to be fitter. It doesn't work like that. That one day doesn't eliminate all of the rest. So we've got to get into a regular routine where we can make it happen and make sure that we're really staying focused. So jot down a couple of things that you want to focus on, and nothing is actually too small, because there might be something small that's preventing you from making that leap into that. And for those who are comfortable, would love for you to share some of those action items. I think that's fantastic, and being able to see them. And it also keeps you a little bit accountable if you're going to share them with the group. And nobody's going to be judging, just supportive. Okay, Lindy's got some very specific ones. Okay. Perfect. So that's great that you have a bookkeeper, Barb, and that you'll be able to get close to it. Same with Stephanie McCullough. Yeah, it is absolutely garbage in, garbage out. For anybody who's just wading into this today, maybe just plug your ears for a second. But for those who've already got a bookkeeper working in accounting software, in your accounting software, there's what's called a chart of accounts. And it's really like the skeleton of your accounting system. Sometimes the skeleton may not be accurate. And so then it produces inaccurate results, which is to Stephanie's point, garbage in, garbage out. So if you're not seeing the revenues cut in the way that you want to, you change the skeleton. And I don't mean you, I mean your bookkeeper. But first you figure out exactly how you want it, you communicate it to your bookkeeper so they can make the changes. If you're coming up on a year end, you might wait to start fresh when the new year starts so that you do it at that juncture, or you may go back to do it for this whole year. But sometimes it's as simple as we need to see more granularity in the revenue, not just sales overall if you're selling a few different things. Okay. Okay, look into funding opportunities to improve cash flow. Absolutely, that's a great one. Okay, thanks, Barb. So you'll see the replay later so you can pick up where we left off. Okay. Stephanie Kunar, look into funding opportunities. Yeah, that's a big one. So we're going to keep going on the theme of cash flow, but I'm a huge advocate, not just because I was a banker, but I hold the personal belief that I don't think credit is good or bad. I think it's all in the responsible usage of it and having access to it when you need it. And certainly, soon as I got my private Canadian corporation, I was at the bank getting a bank account, a credit card, and a small line of credit, so that I would have access to credit if and when I needed it. It also starts the clock on my credit history for my business, so that as I continue to grow, if I should desire to grow, I'm going to have that ability to increase my credit availability. Okay. At the beginning, it's going to be based on your personal credit score, so that there's no surprises, so that you understand that. But then over time, as your business is growing, you're starting to develop that track record in the business, which is important. Okay. Any other comments or questions, or anybody wants to share verbally? And it's Livia, right? Where it says iPad? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Any other questions or comments? I love all the suggestions. So make sure you've jotted them down in your notebook so that we can get started. Okay, so let's move on to page 5 because I want to go into cash flow forecasting 101. And some of you are at a place where you can start to actually jot this down and think about it through, depending on what you've got going on. And so cash flow forecasting is a projection of what you expect your inflows and your outflows to look like and the timing that they will happen. Okay. We can make it super complicated, but that is all cash flow is. And that's what cash flow projections are. When do we think the money's coming in? When do we think that money's going out? And the timing then that's going to happen. And it's not always so easy to forecast. Probably the most challenging thing to forecast is our inflows, because it's predicated on all this sales activity and all this work we're doing and planting these seeds out there of people who will potentially become our clients. So then we have to make educated estimates about how many might come in this month and how many in that month, and how is that all going to happen. Okay. And so just like when we think about from when we're designing a Lindy's saying, can you tell me how many new clients I'll bring in 2022, please? Well, what types of marketing are you doing and how many people are you putting in the top of your funnel? That's where I would start, and that's where you need to start. So yeah. And I guess the desire is, how many would you like a month? Because you can actually probably work backwards. So if you knew how many you wanted a month, what's your usual close ratio, if you know it? And if your business is newer, you might not know. But if you know you want 5 a month, and you've got to talk to 20 to get to 5, which would be a very strong close ratio, how many do you have to reach out to in the first place? Do you got to reach out to 100 to get to talk to 20 to close 5? Or how do those numbers kind of map up? And so if you know your close ratio, and it becomes more challenging if you're selling multiple things, because you've got to know your close ratio for each thing. Because I imagine it's a lot easier for Stephanie and Luann to sell a book than it is for a coaching package. That might take a little bit more, right? So you might have a target for the books, or coaching, or a bundle where you've got the books and the coaching together. And so you probably have different ratios for each one, and you might have different marketing strategies for each. So thinking about what are we doing that's driving the leads that eventually will become the sales. And then it's one step a little bit potentially removed. I make the sale, but now when do I get the cash? Is what we got to be thinking about. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to
go ahead.
divert you. I was just making a joke based off your comments. So sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. You were muted. So do you want to tell us your joke?
Oh, just asking how many new clients I'd have next year for my projections. That's all.
Yeah. Well, we could figure it out though. Because I
No,
remember when we
that's fine.
talked a couple weeks ago, you were closing more than you had expected.
Yeah.
For this first year, and you were really pleased. And so whatever you're doing is working. So you probably at least want to continue on that rate.
So yeah, I don't know. It's certainly not sustainable. I mean, I got 6 new clients in September. So
So then it becomes, do we need to hire more people because we can't actually deliver, right?
I know. Yeah, but then I can't plan for every month to be like that either. So right.
Yeah, Stephanie's saying hello waiting list, and absolutely. Some people want to get started and they feel good just knowing they got started and book someone to help them, and they can start a little bit later. So that's okay. You can give them some stuff to do in advance, which is fantastic. All right. So on page 5, we're going to see the 5 steps to cash flow clarity. So it all starts here. So before we even get into step 1, even if you think about this on a piece of paper, you can do it in Excel. It really depends on how big your business is or kind of what stage. I think if from a real simplistic standpoint, if you can't map out your business quickly on paper with a pencil or a pen, it's very hard to get your head around it. So you want to be able to, even if you just pulled out a piece of paper right now, if we think about, and let's pretend we're going to do a cash flow forecast for October. Okay, so we're almost mid-October, so I'm letting you cheat a little bit. What was your bank balance at the beginning of October? That's your step number 1. It all starts here. Okay, so you get to start with something factual and concrete, because I'm not making you look out way into the future. I'm not saying let's plan for December. Let's start for October, where we already kind of know what's going on a little bit. So step 1, it all starts here. What was your bank account balance at the beginning of October? Last day September, first day October. Sorry, Lindy, do you have COVID yourself, or is it just around you? Oh, you do. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm very good that you are here, and please take care of yourself. Okay. So we're starting here with our initial balance. Step 2, show me the money. What is all the money you think is going to come into your bank account in the month of October? And so some already came in, so you get to include that. You know, some sales that might close. Maybe you were having a blitz on a promotion for a course, because I think Stephanie and Luann, you had a course that started this week, is it? Yeah, so you've been out next week. Okay, so you've been out there outreaching, putting out feelers, doing marketing, all kinds of stuff. How many people do you think are going to be into that course? And if they pay up front, you're going to have that money in the month of October. So realistically, do you think it's going to be 2? Might it be 10? And you can take a guess. And we're not going to try to be as optimistic and as aggressive as we could be. We want to be realistic and conservative with our inflows, okay? Because we don't want to set ourselves up to fail. One of the keys for cash flow forecasting is that we want to be able to see where we're going and actually have a plan, and plan for things that don't go well. So we don't want to be overly optimistic. Step 3, I've got bills, estimate the outflows. And my nephew turned me on to this song by this guy, Lunch Money Lewis. It's called Bills. It is so annoying. If you check it out, it will stay in your head. And it's about this guy who's got to cover all his bills to get by in life. But that's what we're talking about. What are all the outflows that are going to be happening? And so you have a lot more certainty on the bills you've got to pay every month. There's the bills you've got to pay whether or not you make a sale. Insurance doesn't care if you made any sales. If you rent a space, you got to pay your rent. You got to pay for all those subscriptions you use in your computer. You got to pay for internet. You got to pay for cell phone. None of those people care if you made any money, right? So those ones you can do with a lot of certainty. But you might have some variable costs or outflows that are actually tied to what you're selling. So if you have a team member who helps deliver some of your stuff, how much do you have to pay for them? Or when you're running a course, if you've got someone there supporting you, they're only there during that time period, what is the amount you're going to pay them? So it's a mix of what is the stuff you know for sure you're going to pay, and then the stuff that you think you might have to. And in step 3, you want to jam every single thing out in there. Anything you might have to pay this month, you want to be aggressive on that. We don't want to be conservative on our outflows, because we're trying to see realistically how much will come in, how much could possibly have to go out, and see what's happening between those two numbers. Okay. In step 4, we put the pieces together. So we've got our initial balance. We now have an expectation of how much we think is coming in. And then we have to subtract how much we think is going out, and we're going to see what's going to happen at the end of the month. If you've done it conservative on inflows, aggressive on outflows, you might reasonably have a negative number, depending on how much cash you were starting with in the beginning of the month. And that's okay, because now you can see, if I don't want that to come true, what am I going to do? Am I going to make some more follow-up calls to drive more enrollments to my course? Am I going to do more outbound reach outs? Am I going to defer that new hire or that new piece of equipment until another month when I feel more comfortable with my cash flow? But now you have choices. It's also, yeah, I've got my line of credit. I know that if I actually dip down to that point, I'm covered with my line of credit. And so you can feel comfortable about what's going to be happening. And so even if there is a negative number, that's not the end of the world. That's now helping you plan. When I was a lender and account manager, I would tell my clients, if you think you're going to have a cash flow shortage, come to me when you know that, and let's have a chat about that and see what we could do. If you don't have a line of credit, let's see if we can get you one in place. If you already have one, can we temporarily make it larger so that you can weather this up and down of what's going on? Because as I said, growth is sometimes one of the reasons companies do not do well, because the growth is so big and they're not prepared to finance that. And growth is hungry and needs cash to do it. So if somebody's growing really quickly, they need more access to capital. But I told them in advance, great, you're retaining your credibility with the bank. We're able to help you. We can figure out more than one option potentially. If I come to work and your account's overdrawn because you wrote a lot of checks and now there's not enough money for them to clear, now we're having a problem, because now I don't feel as confident that you know what you're doing. Or even if you knew this was going to happen, you didn't tell me. We can't work out plans now in advance. So having that forethought, and by building a cash flow forecast, you might get there days ahead. You might get there a couple months ahead, and then you have so many more solutions that you can come up with to cure those shortages. And step 5 is all day, make it a routine. And I don't mean you're going to spend all day every day on your financial side of your business, but at least once a month, you're going to carve out some time to look at your financial results. You may actually choose to do a smaller amount of time weekly. And so step 4 is put the pieces together, create a cash flow forecast. So where we have the initial balance, add our inflows, subtract our outflows, and then we've got that balance at the end of the month. And that's our cash flow forecast, like really rudimentary. We could do this on paper right now for October with numbers you know in your head. Ideally, you're going to build one out for 6 months into the future. Clearly, the farther you go away from today, the more fuzzy it is. You're going to have more clarity on what the outflows are than the inflows, but that might then drive your business development efforts. It might cause you to do some follow-up with some of those clients you pitched before that you haven't heard back from, and you kind of let them drop. But November, December, January, those might look very unsure. They might be very fuzzy from a revenue or inflow standpoint, but the outflows are pretty known. You know how much you're going to have to pay in terms of bills. So thinking about that. Even thinking about Stephanie and Luann, like if you need to buy more books and you're going to have to outlay before you actually sell them, how are you going to swing that? And that's going to be a realistic thing that you need to think about. On the bottom of page 5, we can talk about what kinds of information can actually help us create this cash flow forecast. So I've talked about what the pieces are, but if we've been running our business for even a couple of months and it's operational, number one, we're going to look at our bank statements. What are all those expenses we pay? So we can either go in our accounting software, or if we don't have one, we're going right to our bank statements to be able to look at what are those outflows. We can look at our financial statements from our accounting software. Credit card statements, because a lot of subscriptions and everything is automatic charge on our credit card, right? So we can pull those numbers. We don't need to be just trying to think of them all in our head. And I would prefer that you don't think of them all in your head, because you're bound to miss something, okay, when you do that. So go and look up those numbers. Invoices. If you're trying to think about, okay, I invoiced 5 clients. I know that the first 3 usually pay me within a week of me sending it out. These last 2 send it within 45 days. And so then you can start thinking, okay, some of that cash is going to hit in October, some of that's going to hit in November. So use the pieces of data at your own fingertips. And everybody's business is different. So you've got to understand yours and look at your numbers. Stephanie helping Stephanie is not going to be the same. It's totally different businesses. It's going to have different inflows, outflows. And so the process is the same, but the numbers and the flow of the cash is totally different. Okay. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up or a reaction. Yeah. Okay, perfect. And so moving on to page 6, the last thing we're going to do around cash flow forecasting is talk about these key benefits, which I've mentioned a little bit already, but so that it's crystal clear. So why will we do this cash flow forecasting? So number 1, so we know in advance when cash shortages may happen. That is the point of this, so that we can actually figure out if we're going to have a shortage. 2, it enables us to make faster decisions. If you've got a cash flow forecast built out and you're always rolling it forward 6 months, and you're thinking, you know what, I'd like to hire an admin part-time, throw those numbers in there, see what happens. Does it work? Because if you've actually got it built out, you put in a few numbers, within minutes, you're going to see, oh, it works for 2 months, but then I'm going to have a shortage. Okay, what could I do to resolve that so that I can still employ that person? Okay, I'm going to make 10 more outbound calls today, or whatever it is. So it allows you to make fast decisions because you can start playing with what if scenarios. And number 3, it provides support to obtain credit facilities at a financial institution. So if you're getting started, you're a relatively small business, they're probably, as I said, going to base it on your personal credit score to give you a line of credit. But as you grow and you're looking for increased facilities, they're going to be looking for some proof as to why do you need this? How do you expect to use it? And so they may be looking for a financial forecast, cash flow forecast for you to show them. And the other thing that wasn't said is it actually brings down your anxiety and stress, because right now it's potentially crossing my fingers. I hope I've got enough money to cover all those bills when they're due. I'm hoping enough sales are going to come in. Now I'm quantifying what I think is going to happen. And if I'm not happy with the numbers I see, I'm actually doing something proactively to change that. And I'm actively working to do that versus I hope and I pray. So now some of that anxiety is lifting off. And I can tell you, when I work with clients and we actually build them out, I can watch the stress visibly lift off their shoulders. Because when you are stressed about money, it's affecting every area of your life. You are not 100% focused on your clients. You are not giving them the attention they need. It's probably negatively impacting relationships with friends, family, other people in your life. You're probably a little bit short-tempered. You're probably feeling anxious. And your focus is always kind of half diverted. You might not be sleeping through the night. You might develop health problems. So all these things are kind of a run-on of this financial strain. And it's not that by doing cash flow forecasts, you're never going to have a problem. You're actually just able to quantify it, and then you can get on to problem solving. And you can't do that unless you actually know the facts and know the numbers, which is the key. So key takeaway from this forecasting section is really, if I understood my cash flow cycle, could forecast cash flow, and knew my financial position, how would that feel? Okay. So we talked about already, if you were in control of your finances, how would it feel? But if you knew that how this cash flow cycle was working, if you could actually forecast it and knew your financial position, how's that going to feel? What would be different in my business or with me? And so really the action item for this part is find the information discussed, grab a piece of paper or start an Excel file and start mapping out what's that initial balance? How much do you think is coming in? How much is going out? And where are you going to be? Okay. And if you have relatively few transactions in your business, doing it on paper is a great start. Okay, don't diminish that, because that gives you clarity. And then when you start pulling out your statements, whether your credit card or your bank statement, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that expense. Think about all these little plugins and apps we pay for that make things talk to each other. I've got all these subscriptions that make my shopping cart talk to my website, that talks to my CRM, and all these little things just add up. And we're paying for them monthly, but we might not have a good handle on how much all those costs are. Okay, so think about that. So that's great. So Stephanie Kunar saying, give us more direction and motivation for the business development. Yeah, it's a good kick in the butt. I got to cover X amount, plus I want to get paid. So I got to do something to drive this. And then Stephanie McCullough, have clarity on what would move the needle. Yeah. If you're in a very tight cash flow situation, so I've just been talking about doing it monthly, but I've worked with customers over the years who do it on a weekly basis, who do it on a daily basis. So monthly is the standard cadence or frequency, if we want to think about that. If you've got tighter cash flow, though, you actually need to do it more granular. And so if you need to do it weekly, do it weekly. If daily is fine, then you do that, okay? So whatever is going to work for you to make sure that you get the right frequency and the right cadence with that. It's so important. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Lindy. She's saying most of us probably do not charge what we are worth. And I am definitely in that group. Doing this exercise may inspire to raise my pricing. Absolutely. Tomorrow will be another kick in the butt. Tomorrow is all about pricing. And I can tell you, like, I typically work with companies, sales are under 2 million. So anywhere under 2 million, 85% of the people I work with, and they're across all different industries, they are pricing unprofitably, which usually means they don't get steady paychecks in their business. And that is not the reason you usually go into business. You're trying to replace income, unless you're starting right out of school, but the goal is to be able to support your personal life and a business, not just have this business that's going on without you being able to use money for your own personal goals, dreams, plans, all of that kind of stuff. Okay. What questions do you have? So feel free to unmute if you've got questions or comments. I'd love to hear.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, nice to meet you in person,
Nice
Lillian.
to meet you too.
Or in person on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. So as a startup, when we go to a bank to say apply for a business credit card or apply for line of credit, will they be evaluating only the health of our business, or do they look at our own personal lines of whatever you said credit score?
Yeah, they'll look at everything personally, because they'll be expecting you to sign a guarantee personally. And so they'll need to evaluate your credit score is kind of the culmination of everything you've got personally. So if say you were out and you just recently got a new mortgage and you sought some other credit personally, that would have a negative impact on your score if it's really close to the same time frame. But they're just looking at to see if you have the wherewithal and the capacity to pay back, should you have to, this business debt as well.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And you guys have one incorporated company, or you each your own one? Okay.
Yeah, just we
so
share one. Yeah.
They'd be looking for you both to sign for that.
Yeah, I know. We looked into it and they wanted like they wanted an appointment with us and they wanted to get to know us. I mean, it seemed like a lot of work at the time. So I was just kind of curious.
It's worthwhile though. Yeah, I would do it just to get used to the process, because you guys don't know where you're going to go and how, like, what the company will look like in the future. So at least by establishing the credit now, even if it's like a $5,000 overdraft, like you've got it. You may never use it, but at least that's starting to trigger the clock on this company is formed and it has credit and it uses it responsibly.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Livia. You just have to unmute. I can ask you. Oh, there you go.
Yes. Well, I have a pretty tough experience on the financial end, and as you can imagine. So I'd like to share with everyone. I have used my line of credit because I wasn't able my personal line of credit, which was not used at all, and was coming from my house. At the time for my business, because my bank would not qualify me for anything, and that's why I'm listening to you, and I'm just appalled. I'm in the U.S., so that's probably a little different. I don't know. I did establish though, because my company started 6.5 years ago, and I'm still, as a consultant, it's pretty tough. I'm still working on. I have established some good relationship with the bank. But now, by this time, because I got charged off, and I don't know, I couldn't understand. So there are some tricks of the trade that I learned it the hard way, because I was coming from an 835 credit score on a personal level, and then decreased by over 250 as soon as that line of credit got to the top end. And I never knew I was negotiating for a lower monthly payment, so I could meet my budget established. So and I'm in a tough position, which I wanted to bring, so everybody wanted to know about. When you get a partner or an investor, not partner, I wanted an investor just to invest for the money I needed to continue on and not give up on this business of mine. I did bring in an investor, which actually did just took advantage of building the relationship with the parent company and not providing the investment to me. And it's like it's a constant. I don't know how to get out of this without a conflict, which probably I have to do it with the legal, and I just deferred it as my compensation or income or anything. Business ownership have been deferred for all these years. And so just be aware, ladies.
Yeah, and your business is quite a bit different because you're building something that requires a lot of capital up front to get the idea to a viable option to then sell to others, which is different than everybody else in here. But that your point around bringing in investors, you have to be very careful when you are bringing in investors as well, and know what they're bringing, what they expect you to do, what are going to be the ongoing roles and responsibilities going forward. And there's lots of horror stories of negative things happening to women when they're bringing in investors. Sometimes when the company is very successful, even as much as ousting the woman as the CEO once things get to a certain level. So
yeah, no, I know what I need to do, but I'm glad that you are confirming that I don't feel like I was just so much in the wrong, because I didn't think I was.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
you're welcome. All right. Any other questions or comments from anybody? No? All right, super. So you've got your takeaways. So action items, you're going to start your cash flow forecast if you can. And then you're also thinking of 3 things that you need to do in your business so you can better understand the financial position. And tomorrow when we come back together, same time, same place, it's pricing 101, which is key number 3. And we're going to talk about not only the math about pricing, but also the stories and the mindset part that comes up. There's going to be a deeper mindset part on Friday. But what comes up when we ask people, when we actually articulate the price, and what are we thinking about? And do we have the price pegged right, or are we lowballing because we feel like people might say something to us, or we think we don't have enough value in what we're offering? So usually the pricing session's pretty well received. So I hope that you will join me tomorrow. There will be a replay going out today that has the link to YouTube, and also just the recap from the workbook, so that you'll be able, if you missed any blanks as you were going through, you'll be able to double check that you've got everything there. All right. So I'm so glad you joined me today. I will hang around for a few minutes for anybody who might have some other questions, but if not, we'll see you tomorrow. So thank you so much for being enthusiastic and excited about business finances. Thank you, Lindy. Thanks, Luann.
Tracy.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.